Hello, everyone. Joel here from the OTC headquarters, checking that everyone is still alive, kicking, and paying attention to what we're doing. And our next presentation is by Lisette. Oh, you're going to need to help me with your last name, please.
No, that's easy. It's Lisette Zounon.
Oh, it's really easy. Zunon. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's a lot simpler than mine. I'm going to give you that.
actually, yes.
Most are much simpler than mine. Don't worry about that. Now, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can actually start sharing on your side. And in the
Right.
meantime, I'm going to introduce you for a second, even though I'm pretty sure that you're going to do it yourself as well. But Lisette, she's been in the field for over 15 years. She's currently a quality engineering leader and strongly believes that Agile and DevOps are invaluable and inevitable to what we need to do. And what we liked about the presentation is that we like looking at topics that might be used a number of times, but that still need fine tuning. And I think that KPIs and metrics in general have been vilified for the wrong reasons for a long time, mostly because we use them wrong. It's not fault of their own. I mean, it's not the knife that it's bad, it's the person using it, in the same way that it's not the KPI that is wrong, it's the person choosing the wrong API for what they want to do. And that is what caught my eye from your presentation. So Lisette, the floor is yours, and good luck.
All right. Thank you, Joel. So I'm gonna start sharing and we going to get into it. All right. Let me tell me when you can see the
We
slide. I
can
think
see
I'm
the screen, not yet in
yes.
presentation mode.
Right.
And now we're A-OK.
Right. So, hello everybody. I'm Lisette Zounon, and today I want to bring you a conversation really on how we define KPIs. There's a lot of myth around KPI and how we can define and create, KPI metrics for QA that are really valuable for the team. So, let's get started. We're going to hit five main point today. What is the purpose of the KPI for your need, specific need? Adapt the KPI to your organization culture. Practical QA KPI that bring value to your team. Determine the KPI metrics for your QA team only. And I'm going to say why only. Define the KPI metrics for your product quality health as well. A little about me, I think Joel touched on it. I wear many hats. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a podcast host. My podcast is hashtag up your confidence. So I'll invite you guys. I talk about pretty much everything, but mostly around women confidence. But I think the title that is most accurate for today conversation is really software quality leader and agile scrum and coach. Agile scrum and coach. And I've been in software development for about 16 years now, and I've had various role in QA, starting from the tester lead, software support, software manager, software director, and then owning my own consulting and helping client with various software challenge that they have. So I know firsthand why and how QA metrics can be a challenge. It can be a myth if we don't use it properly. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I have my social media down here if you guys want to connect. I love to connect. So before we start, I know this is remote and this has been a super challenging year. So I like to make sure that when we are in a presentation that we start with the question right away. So use the Slack channel. I'm going to try to check it out later, but also use the question portion here as well. And question, comment, I love them. Don't wait toward the end. Do it right away so that, we can be having a conversation that I want to call it really. So for today's session, we got to start thinking about everyone is really focusing about data metrics, to make major decisions. But when it comes to software quality metrics, it can become a myth. I've seen it in organization, and sometimes it works, sometimes we miss it, So KPI metrics can really determine, if you use it right, the health of your product or service that you're delivering, and for me, I really feel like it should be a guidance to your continuous improvement. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. So let's start by getting to know each other a little bit, because I like to make sure that my presentation are really super active, super interactive. So if you would please go to www.menti.com and type in this code, and we're going to see, and when you type in this code, it's going to bring you to this page. And I want to know, what is your role, because I'm curious to know who are the folks that we have in the room at the presentation today. That will really help us determine, who are we talking to. So if you can go ahead and start populating that, that would be awesome. All right, so I'm seeing test manager, automation architect, awesome, QA engineer, test manager, QA engineer, senior QA engineer, good. I'll give a couple of more minutes. I think we have 10 so far, and we have over, I like to have at least 20 to 25%, 25% participation. So keep it going for another couple of seconds here. This gives me an idea, who are we talking to, right audience, right folks. It seems like we all QA folks, consulting, that's fine, that's great. Manual and automation, awesome. All right, maybe 5 more and then we can keep going. All right, keep it going. All right, so, okay, good, great, senior test. So we are mostly into quality insurance, that's our bread and butter pretty much. All right, that's awesome. I love it. All right, one more to make it 30 maybe. SQA. So everybody, so good. So we have a pretty good representation, So it gives me an idea, so I know that I'm not speaking, a foreign language, or I can just know how to tailor the conversation, right? So what is KPI? We all know probably what is KPI. It's really to measure the value and demonstrate how effectively an organization is achieving the key objective. So organization, we usually use KPI at multiple levels to evaluate success at how we're reaching a certain target, So high level KPI focus on overall performance of the business, while low level KPI may focus on a specific process in the department. So in terms of quality, you think in really low level KPI, but we can expand on that here. So another Menti question for you all. What kind of metric do you measure in your organization right now? What kind of metric? So go back to the same Menti, and let's talk about what kind of metric do you measure? That's the next question. Same Menti, same code again. Okay, I see CPPM, okay. What kind of metrics, KPI metrics, do you currently measure in your organization? All right, customer issue, okay, now they're coming. Cycle time, velocity, number of bugs, okay. Utilization of feature in production, percentage of automation, okay. Open bug, at this point, none, which is, okay, that one went away. At this, we just get to manage new, and who wanted the metrics? I hear that. Number of users of the startup app, requirement matrix, okay, like that. Velocity of the team, release frequency, story point, number of user, production failure, okay, automation coverage, all right. Quarterly bug count, okay, number of test cases, yes, with a smiley face, I love that. Production issue, bug, okay. let's see, story point deliver. Yep. All right. Couple of more and then we can move on. Story point, I'm seeing the same thing. Prod issue bug, AC meaning acceptance criteria. Okay. Percentage of automation. What is stickiness use? Okay, that's an interesting one. All right, let's see. All right. Production failure, yes, definitely. Okay, so we have good, all these are velocity of the team. Okay, yes, that's a common one. Story point completion. Okay, that's a good one. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay. Number of tests. So I think we kind of like scrolling now. All right. Cool. So these are the kind of metrics that you guys measure in your organization. It's good to see that. So in general, and I'm sure because I wanted to get a feed, but in general, when we're talking about quality KPI, people talk about escape bug. I didn't see escape bug on the list, but failed test case is usually a common one. We also see code coverage. That's one that it's also common. We also talk about number of critical defect and number of test case pass, right? So I'm thinking quality KPI. So I saw some over there that might not fall into the quality, but it's still KPI. All right. So let's talk about now, what are the myths in your organization about KPI? Because I'm sure they are, right? So let's talk about those. Same thing again, go to the same Menti. I'm going to switch to the next slide here. What are the KPI myths in your organization? Because that's the one that we really want to focus on today a little bit and trying to demystify those. So yeah, go ahead and tell us. Nobody's here. How did you miss this? I love that already. Yes. How did you miss the bug? Probably, right? Yes. None. Okay, great. Whoever wrote none, great. Keep it going. This is anonymous, so nobody's gonna see legacy application bug versus release related bug. KPI do not show the whole picture. Oh, that's an interesting me. It does not show the whole picture. Okay, that's a good one. I like that. Yes. A little bit more. KPI are not up to date. Interesting. Not up to date. Okay. Not up to date. Okay, now up to date. Got it. Number of test automation equals to quality. Oh, that's a good one. KPI can show what people want to see. Okay, why did QA not catch it? QA is the only job developer can do. Okay, yeah, that's another common one. I agree. And this too. This is an odd flow, edge flow, none use it. Yeah, instrumentation take too much time, so not everything is measured. Right, totally agree on that one too. That's a common myth. Let's do a couple of more and then we go back. Whoever said none, more power to you. 100% test case pass equals to quality. Yes, that's 100% code coverage with tests, but wow, there's still bug. Yeah, what happened there? You don't have to test that. Why is QA taking so long to finish testing and dev has to help out with testing? Yes. Amount of test case equals to quality. Yes. What KPI don't explain me more about bug? Why KPI don't explain me more about exactly? Why do you need that much time? Yes, some of them are not KPI meet, but they are meet. Okay, all right, two more and then we'll move on because the more I'm waiting, you guys are giving me more great stuff. Amount of tests equal to quality. Okay, yes. KPI will tell us how good QA is. Yes, that's another myth. Yes. All right, good. We have a good number. All right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I think this is probably one of the last one. I have maybe one more. So yeah, so as you guys can see, you know, I didn't want to really come here and tell you the myth, because somebody said none, everybody work in different organization, and so you might have none, but usually the framework, the myth behind KPI is it's used against folk in the team, right? So we try to decide, we're trying to determine quality by using the KPI, you know. The manager use it as a blaming instrument. So it's an instrument that can be used as a blaming, finger pointing. Somebody say, why developers still have to test, why you don't have enough time, you know, why the number of test cases that you have doesn't mean you have quality. So it's even used to target individuals. So those are the myth, you know. I didn't want to list the myth, but this is the feeling behind the myth that you get with the various KPI. Let's see. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's demystify the KPI myth. Most metric invoke some discomfort in team member. That's just the reality of it. You know, I've been in team where when you start talking about metrics, everybody just backtrack like, okay, I don't want to be involved with this conversation. You know, last time we tried to unveil or reveal the metrics, you know, it revealed a lot more conversation that we were not ready to really have. You know, team are not inspired. This is the one that really demoralizing in a certain way. Team are not really inspired by the KPI collection. You know, nobody really inspired to collect the KPI metrics. They're not motivated, and then even when you determine it, they're not motivated to strive for it either. You know, so you really lose the point. They don't want to collect it. They're not inspired to even create it, and they don't want to they don't want to collect it either. You know, and they don't want to strive to whatever threshold that you create. So all that just give a negative feeling to it. So I want us to think about a better approach when we're talking about KPI. So we got to start thinking about what is the why. You got to start with why. You know, why are we even creating KPI? You have to promote the following as part of your KPI: better visibility, clear transparency into the data, so everybody has an understanding of the data, direct accountability of the data, guidance for continuous improvement. This is really my favorite part. You know, the KPI is just giving us guidance into what we should strive for, and we should be able to continuously, you know, striving to get to a better evolution of the data that we're collecting. So why? Define the why. I love this quote by Simon Sek. You know, it's really to define your QA quality vision. What is the reason why you're trying to collect data even at the first place? What are you trying to do with the data, you know? And Simon Sek say, and if those who start with why, that have the ability to inspire those around them or find other who inspire them. So there's a need to inspire people and to even know the reason why you're collecting the data. And for every organization is different, right? It's different. It might be because we just need to know where we stand most of the time, or we need to know in a grand vision what is the direction that we're trying to go in terms of quality, or we just need to have a better confidence level, which is the one that are my favorite. You know, KPI doesn't give you quality, like somebody say in the Menti poll that we did, right? But it's just to give you a better confidence level of where you're going in terms of determining the quality of your application. So this is how I like to frame up your KPI to start out with. A couple of questions need to be asked and need to be answered to who need it, you know, who really need this data, because not everybody need the same kind of data. What is it for? What do you need the data for? And how is it going to be used? Those are the main questions that I like to tackle when I'm framing up any KPI data. That way we all know the reason why we need it and what we're going to use it for. Who are the audience? You know, who's the audience that need the data? In my experience, and you guys can tell me if it's different in your organization, but in my experience, it's usually three category of folks that need the data. You got the team member, the actual QA team member doing the testing, regular testing, and you have a team manager. It might be a software quality manager, it might be a dev manager, it might be an ops manager, it might be a DevOps manager, but any team member that is responsible of the application on the test Those are the folks that usually also interested. So middle management usually. And then you have the leadership team really want to see this data at a high level. They really want to understand, okay, we got this application going live in production in 2 weeks. Where do we stand? You know, am I going to be able to sleep well at night? Is there going to be any issue in production? Is there, how is the performance of the application? So very high level. Those are the three categories of the folks that are usually interested in your quality KPI. I want to talk a little bit about culture, because culture really matters when it comes to collecting KPI, you know. And I love this quote by Peter Drucker that say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you got to really think about the culture of the organization, because there's several things that can happen with KPI. KPI can be used positively, you know, as a positive tool. It can be used negatively, and you know, people can say, okay, now we see the number of bugs that was created, that means so and so didn't do the job right, and then they start tracking down the metrics to a point where they want to find who did something wrong. Or my approach, the best approach is the last one, is really KPI can be constructive. You know, it's really need to be constructive into getting better and improve the application and strive for quality. That's really how I think the best way you can really use KPI. Now, consider your team. You know, when you're doing KPI, usually, at least in my experience as a software quality manager, folks are really interested into the KPI for external reason. You know, dev team want to know it, the stakeholder want to know it, the leadership want to know it. But I think the best thing first is to consider your team. Ask your team what matter for them first. You know, what are the QA team really trying to find out about their internal data? Consider what the data your team want to track, you know. So you got to come internally and ask your team, what do they really want to track? You have to choose a data that means something for your team and that they can improve over time, because it's not really about striving for the data today, but it's how you can really keep pushing every time and improve over time. That's really where you get the most value into collecting a great KPI. What QA KPI matter to you? So another last mentee is probably to see for you that is on the call, on the call with us today in this presentation, what KPI really matter to you. So let's go back to mentee. Let's see here. Let's go back to mentee, and let's see what QA KPI matter to you. Let's spend a couple of minutes on that one. Okay, I'm seeing one coming up. It could be none, right? So I'm sure something mattered to you from your perspective, maybe because you were a QA team member, or maybe because you're a QA manager, or you're a software architect, or a automation engineer. What metrics do you think really matter to you? Okay, cycle time. Oh, they were showing. I was not seeing them. Okay, percentage of test automation. Okay, actionable KPI based on contest. Number of open critical bug. That's a good one. Customer satisfaction, execution rate, test code coverage, priority of bug, test coverage, trend and number only. Okay, trend and availability of product and service. Great. Help with my personal growth. Love that. Yes. Code coverage and test pass. Okay. ROI. Love that too. ROI. Critical escaping defect. That's another one of my, just let me go back to this. End user encounter a blocker. Oh gosh, yes. Time spent on development and testing per task. Okay, so time. Test execution time. Miss bug, right. Escape rate, wow, yes. Test coverage and bug reporting. Okay, a lot of them are coming through. Number of bug found during a project. Yes, that's a common one. Quality product and production bug. Testing is completed within LOE level of effort time, test time. Okay. Number of bug in accepting stakeholder happiness. Totally. All right. I think I got to the end. All right. Any more? Maybe a couple of more, then we can go back. I got one more thing. Grow and system knowledge. Perfect. All right. One more, I think. Why do you find this bug now? Okay, that's a good question. Defect late. That's a common one too that a lot of people are interested in. Yes. One more to make it a good percentage of us. Okay, I have one more. Thank you. Bug found by automation. That's a great one. Last one and great one. Awesome. Thank you all for participating. Awesome. Thank you. So team activity. This is going to be a team activity, but we're not going to do it, but I will totally encourage you to do this activity within your team, right? So each person in the team say the matrix that important to them, you know, and then you get together and discuss in your group as a team what KPI matter to all teams. So you put all of them together, you group all the KPI together, and you put a line, and you on the other column you talk about why is this important to you, because it's also important to know the why behind it. That way you can track it properly and you can try to achieve it or reach it. Then ask, what is the impact of measuring? You know, if we start measuring this, how is this really going to help us improve? You know, how we can improve with this KPI over time. So that's an exercise that I would definitely encourage you guys to do, especially if you're a team manager, or you know, you're managing a team, or even if you're an individual, you know, a team member. You can bring this. You can say, okay, I was at a conference and I got this cool idea. Let's try as a team so we can, you know, revamp our KPI metrics. So that's a fun activity that I always do with team. Define QA KPI metrics for QA team only. So now in the next slide, we're going to talk about how we can define some KPI for our own internal team, you know, a team and a different audience. So define QA KPI need for your team. In this case, you want to define what is success look like, and you want to find what is the threshold to determine success. So what does success look like? I'm collecting this metric, but how am I going to know if I'm trending in the right direction? That's really the second thing you need to determine. So I've done this several times with different teams in different organizations, and this is really a collection. So I do this activity with the team, right? So each team is different because it's different of the team environment, the relationship that they have with the dev, and also the culture, and also what they're trying to collect at this precise time. So, but I put them all together in this slides and we define for the QA team something that we call the QA scorecard. So this is really only for QA team members that see this data. So we talk about active defect. I think some of you guys talk about that in the Menti earlier. Author test cases, you know, because I want to know how many test cases were created as we go and during the sprint, if you want to call it, during the development. Cover requirement, you know, somebody talked about requirement matrix earlier. This is also one matrix that we came about to determine, you know, how when I map my test case to requirement, how many requirement is already covered. And my threshold is I want to get between 80 and 100%. Defect fixed per day / per week. This is also a thing that we came about to determine how fast is the bug are getting fixed. And I think somebody referred to that earlier. Pass requirement, number of test cases that get passed, pass test case, number of test cases that got passed. You know, my threshold is 80% that I want. reject defect no more than 5%. So I really want to know how many bugs get created and defect get created and they get rejected by development team. So no more than 5%. That's really the threshold that we define. Review requirement, we create this review requirement between dev and QA. So we want to know how many requirements get really reviewed, because the more you can review the requirement, the better you'll be able to test it, and the less bug you probably find, or the less reject bug that you find. So those are things that came about as doing this exercise. And critical defect, what are really the P1 or P2 defect that we found during the testing, and we defined this is just a number that we gave. We should not be no more than 10. So that's an example of QA scorecard that I had for my team, and we periodically on a weekly basis are looking at this data during an implementation or during testing cycle. And this data is really giving us a direction. It's giving us a picture. And I like to call it a conversation piece, because any given data that is outside of the threshold or not meeting is trying to tell us something. And then we can go about that things that we're missing and trying to figure out what can we do and how can we improve as we are going through the implementation. The next one that I want to talk about is really define QA KPI metric for team manager, right? We talk about team manager being the software quality manager, the dev manager, the DevOps or ops manager, or delivery manager, different role. Anybody that manage the teamwork, and is responsible of the application on the test. So you want to show progress really at this level. I'm really interested in the progress of testing activity. How is it going? So also define success, what success look like, and also the threshold for success. So for this one, this is also another activity that you do with your dev team, and trying to determine what's really going to work for you. What do you care about? What data? Just like I asked earlier, what data do you care about? And why do you care about that data? So this is an example of possible solution that we came about, was just user story, the number of user story. In this case, we're doing Agile. If you're not doing Agile, you can talk about the number of requirement. User story that got passed, meaning, it got tested and then we gave it thumbs up and those passed. So the percentage of test case passed, the number of test case that was created in total, and the number that got passed versus the number that failed. The number of test cases not executed, because sometimes you don't get to execute everything. So it's also important for me to understand, or for the dev team or the DevOps manager to understand what's not being covered. Because one of the myths that you saw earlier was why you guys are testing, but we still find a bug, right? But maybe we can point to this metric here and say, no, we didn't test everything. We didn't execute everything for X, Y, Z and reason. There's always a reason behind it. And some metrics, defects and some metrics. So defect metrics is really how many defect is open and how many defects has been closed. So that gives you progress, how far do we still have to go to get somewhere. And you can also add those defects by category, or you can add them by component, depending on how your application is laid out, you can classify them by different component in your application. So you get to see specifically, maybe in this component of my application, there's a lot more bug, maybe this is the back-end issue, maybe this is the front-end issue. That way, as a dev manager, for instance, you can focus your resource and your training in that specific area. So I like metrics that tell you story, metrics that guide you into what you need to do next. So that's really the possible solution that you can have for a dev manager or dev team manager. Now, let's talk about KPI metrics for leadership team, right? So for leadership team, they're really interested into a quick decision making. They really want to have a high level view of what's going on, but we also want to define what success look like and give them a good threshold of success. So in terms of this for leadership, you want to give them a first glance. So quickly, they want to see red, yellow, and green, red, yellow, what's going on? You know, you got to frame up the data for making fast decision. So this is another possible threshold that we created, you know, for leadership is 80% of the test case has passed. That way we're looking good, we're in the green. A certain percentage of user story also pass. So that also give us a thumbs up. Number of P1 and P2 bugs, you know, so you want to know where are we, how many bugs are really high priority right now that we still have open or that we have found, you know. And you guys talked about this earlier when I was asking about KPI that might be interested is really the number of escape bug in production, right? So we released the application, it went live, and a week or 2 or 3 later, we get in other bug in production. So we want to know how many of those have we really missed, and maybe go back and determine the reason why. And with this, we determine the product quality health with the different color scheme that I created here. Another thing that I really love is really creating a dashboard or a matrix dashboard. You know, dashboard really give you increased visibility. These are example of dashboard that I've used in the past. You know, various tool give you various possibility. These were from Azure DevOps, I believe, you know. So the goal is not really to look into this, but it's just to give you a graphical representation of what a dashboard will look like, you know, depending on how you configure or what tool you have. But it really give you increased visibility. It foster accountability and responsibility because now the metric is out there, everybody can see it, and we can be responsible for say, okay, we have 2 P2 bug that we really working on right now, and we have 6 P2 bugs that we're working on. So this is where we are, and this is how many percentage of test cases that pass. You know, it's also value transparency. So there's transparency. There's no finger pointing. There's no you can use it as an instrument of blaming, you know, because the information is really out there, and we're not really tracking for people, but we're really tracking for data and how to make a decision about the data and how to have a conversation or a story behind the data. All right, so with a dashboard, there's several things you can do, but what I like to do is really to determine and define the quality of the health of your product or the application that you're creating. So you are able to determine your KPI matrix to assess the quality health for each project that you're delivering, and you will be able to strive for high quality for each release. So several things that come into play to determine the product quality. This is an example that I've used in the past is really the number of test cases, the number of escape bug in production, found in production, and the percentage of user story, the rate of the user story getting passed. And we define some threshold to determine green, yellow, and red. So if percentage of test cases greater than 80%, that means we are in green, you know, excellent. If it's between 80 and 50%, it's really yellow and it's satisfactory. And if it's red, it's really unsatisfactory. It's less than 50%. And we do the same thing for the escape bug, but we choose a 10% threshold. So anything that is less than 10%, that means are really in a great shape. Anything that is between 10 and 30%, it's really yellow, it's satisfactory, and anything that is greater than 30% is unsatisfactory. So these give you that quicker first glance approach into determine the quality between the number of test cases that pass and the number of escape bug. You know, you're trying to find a value to determine, you know, at a high level, how is your application going. Couple of benefit for the QA team. What is the benefit for the QA team? You know, there's better team engagement, definitely. Everybody try to strive to improve for the data over time. That's really my favorite part because you have those threshold, you know, you're trying to improve and strive to it as much as possible. But you also have the continuous improvement and training opportunity. because now you are able to define and find out where there's some gap and there's some place where you can change and improve on. It's also helped to analyze the metrics every phase of testing, right? So you know for each testing activity what metrics you can properly analyze. It's also improve your ROI over time, your test automation ROI, and give you really a peace of mind and positive return on investment, which is all great in my mind. All right, I think I'm going over time. So summary, I'm gonna skip this. So pretty much thank you. This was fun. I'm gonna go ahead and look at the question a little bit and see if there's any question, but you can already follow, try to connect with me on social media, C Square and all the social media, and C Square 4 on Instagram. And I do write blog posts every month. And my last blog post was really about the same conversation, KPI metrics, that I just posted this week. So thank you.
And thank you very much, Lisette. One sec. Here we go. So
I want to stop sharing.
Yeah, no, don't worry. All good. I have a question here that I think it's something that it's very common on the fact of KPIs, at least the KPIs that I see, and that is that the team usually starts with the knowledge that, yes, we need to do KPIs, we need to measure, and in theory, it makes sense. We all agree on that. The problem is that then the sprint gets very tight and the user story starts to slip, and velocity is at risk here. So we start taking a lot of shortcuts, and the first things that are sacrificed are going to be those that are not customer facing. And maybe metrics are not going to be the first one, but they might be the second or third one. How do you try to make people understand that metrics are, and KPIs in general, are important in order to understand that we're still aligned and that it's not a nice to have? How do you switch that conversation so that management usually will still defend the necessity of them?
Yeah, so the way that I like to think about metrics is it has to be, it shouldn't be something that is a second thought, you know. We have to keep doing our work. Testing is what we do, you know, it's bread and butter for us. And the metrics should just be weaved into our daily life. That's why I talk about dashboard. I usually like to set it up for my team, and they don't need to collect it. The system is already collected for them. I just need to be able to see it and use it as a conversation piece, because like you say, in the middle of testing, nobody has time now and go sit down and say, oh, how many test cases has I passed? I want to be able to find out seamlessly, you know, by running maybe save queries or save some kind of save query that is already available, where you don't have to spend more than 30 minutes collecting metrics on a weekly basis for anybody, you know. And also the visibility part is really what that helps, because anybody at any level of the organization should be able to poke around in the system and find the metrics that they need, or come to like the QA manager and say, I need this. So I am not fond of like making metrics a second part of your job, where, okay, I'm going to test for like 36 hours and 4 hours a week I need to collect metrics. That's really not acceptable. Nobody's going to do that. I know, because I'm a QA person and I'm not going to spend that time. So you got to set it up at the beginning. Now, in terms of the conversation, it's that's why, because I think what happened with leadership is they're not interested in all the nitty gritty, the number of defect, escape. That you have to really sit down and say, what do you want to know about what we're doing? What's going to make you feel happy or give you that confidence level or that peace of mind about the application? And once they tell you, sometimes they might not know, maybe you need to go through a certain activity to determine the metrics that make sense for them. Once you find that out, you put it somewhere that they can go get it on their own. You know, it's like set it and leave it, and then just go check it when you need it. I think that's helped leadership, in my experience, be more interesting and leave the team alone, you know, leave a team alone, because usually what happens is, it's happened several times. QA team are not even interested in the metrics because they're collecting metrics for other people, you know. While if they're collecting metrics for themselves, they will be more interested. So that's why I like to slice it by the different folks that are interested in the metrics. So it's almost like it's a menu, right? You pick what you want to eat and then you're excited about it instead of just eating almost like a dog food of somebody else. Then you're never going to go look at it. And in some organization, people set up metrics, they do so many workshops about it, and nobody ever go and look at it because they were not interested at it from the get-go.
Okay, thank you. Another question here actually came on the Q&A. It's what kind of metrics are absolutely no-goes? Which ones are the KPIs that you think might backfire?
Oh, backfire. So the backfire one, this is an interesting question because one metric that you might saw on my list was the rejected bug, you know, and that bug, that metrics was like 5-hour conversation with my team at some point because they were like, why do we need it? Because somebody thought it was a good idea. And I was like, let's check it out. Why not? You know, so some metrics, that's why I always like to make sure you get a common agreement within the team. You know, they're not thinking the reason why. So reject any metrics that will pinpoint to a specific person are usually not a great one because I can definitely say, okay, why did they reject this bug? You know, and then it become a conversation that you need to explain, right? Or metrics such as bug, not only bug that was rejected, but how many defects is test per hour. There was one about that number of defect that test per hour or per day. Those are not good either. Or some organization, people like to collect defect about how many defects were found by people per day. Those are really definitely no go because it's now not helping the QA or whoever is testing strive to do better. It's almost like you now TikToking and sitting there just waiting to create defect. I don't like those. I think they're not constructive. And my really goal is really what metrics are we gonna get that will help us improve. It's not to point figure, but it's really help us to improve. So those are a few ones that I can think about because I'm not really looking for metrics to get people in trouble. So that's not something I pay attention to.
No, sounds good. There are a couple of questions here, and I'm going to pick only one because we're almost out of time.
Right.
Okay. Again, just one of them. How do you address rejected bug metrics so the testers are not discouraged from reporting them? Because you started talking about it, so I think it's a good follow-up.
That is a good one. That is a good one. And I'm still, you know, trying to find a great balance. And I think it really come to like the leadership. It really come to you, the manager, your intention, you know. That's why in my slide I mentioned about you got to start with the why. Why are we collecting the metrics? If they know for 1 second the reason why you're collecting the metrics is to point them or to talk about it in the performance review, nobody is ever going to pay attention to that. So you really, and what I had to do was like, no, I really want to know why the bug was rejected, not because I don't want you to keep creating bug. I actually always encourage team member to create the bug. As soon as you feel like it's a bug, create it. The more the better, right? But if you get rejected, you got to stop and figure out why are you still getting your bug rejected. Maybe you're not reading the user story properly. Maybe you are not paying attention to the AC acceptance criteria. Maybe the user story was not reviewed. But you really have to, every time somebody has a reject bug, you have to go back and be constructive about it. It's like, what is the reason why this happened? And try to have a teachable moment with that person. That way they can be encouraged to continue. Otherwise, it's totally a challenge. And it's a very slippery slope you have to walk with your team member with those kind of metrics.
Excellent answer. And there are a number of additional questions on the Q&A, but I will recommend these people to just copy them, pass them over to the Slack channels. We need to go on a short break so that people can actually go and refresh themselves. Lisette, it was very interesting and a very filled with information session that I'm sure that people will be able to just take and again use it in their day-to-day work. So thank you very much for it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.